I wanted to do a review of the Ohana Sopranino ukulele, and Ohana kindly sent me one to review. It came via the ukuleleshop.co.uk. They're a very excellent shop. If you need any advice and you're living in Europe, any advice, ring Richard up or Jana, and they will help you choose the perfect ukulele. A very, very helpful shop. I can't praise them highly enough. Anyway, this arrived a couple of days ago. I've had a chance to try it out. The strings haven't quite settled yet, so it may well go out of tune during the review. Let's just hear it first. It's a nice sounding instrument, and it's going to start to get better and better because it's a solid instrument. It's made from solid mahogany. The back, sides and top are solid mahogany, and that can only improve with age. It will take a little bit of time to settle in, to start to produce its best tone, particularly in an instrument this size. It's really quite a tiny instrument. If we compare it, I could compare it to an Ohana Soprano, but they're actually a little bit larger than I would consider standard. So I'm going to compare it to this Bruco, which is a fairer comparison, and you can see that the Ohana Sopranino is absolutely tiny. This is a fairly standard soprano size. You can see that the Sopranino is tiny. Not only is the body size smaller, but also the scale length. Now I'll just put this down. This means that the fret spacing is very much closer together, even here close to the nut, than on a standard soprano. And I suppose some people might find it difficult positioning their fingers just to get the fingers accurately in place. But I suppose that's true also of any change of instrument. If you're used to playing one size, then playing something smaller or larger is always going to be a problem just to get used to at first. Let's go through it very quickly. We've got standard friction tuners. On a Sopranino, tuning is a little bit more critical. It is quite difficult to get it in tune compared to, let's say, a tenor. But no problem, these are good friction tuners. Nice headstock. It's got the usual Ohana inlay in some sort of pearl material. The strings are Aquila, and they work fine. A Sopranino, though, does need to be tuned, I feel, a little bit higher than a soprano, otherwise the strings feel a bit slack. So I've got this tuned to the old-fashioned tuning, I call it, the European tuning, where we've got A, D, F sharp and B. So it's one tone or one full step higher. The frets are nicely put into the rosewood fingerboard. There's no sharp bits at all. It's not bound at the edge, but there are no sharp bits. It feels very, very smooth. There's some sort of plastic material binding the front and the back, and that looks quite elegant because it's a sort of off-white and it goes very nicely with the dark brown mahogany. The same with the rosette, and there's also a black line going round the rosette and round the outside here. The bridge is nice and tidy. It's rosewood, it's got a plastic saddle, and it's nice and high, the action, which means that it can be taken down if you prefer a lower action. But of course, if it's too low, it's hard to take it up. The slots here enable you to put a little knot at the end of the string, and it just goes behind that little slot. I don't know if you can see them clearly. The danger here is that if you don't make a big enough knot, the string can, under tension, come out. So just make sure if you have one of these bridge arrangements to do that. The back is not book matched, which means that this side doesn't match this side. It's all one piece. Now I haven't mentioned yet, but it is all solid. Top, sides and back, all solid mahogany. And it's good to have a solid piece, one piece at the back here, because it will vibrate better than two pieces. It does need to be solid, I feel, a sopranino does, because with it having such a small body, it's going to have very few bass frequencies in the sound. The sound is going to be quite thin, and if it were also very quiet, which is what you would get with a laminate instrument, it's not going to compete with other instruments that are playing along with it. So I feel that it does need to be solid wood. I would prefer solid wood instruments anyway, but here, you know, it is pretty vital. So it's solid top, sides and back, solid mahogany. Mahogany is not a particularly decorative wood, but it does, this rich brown does look beautiful. It's got a satin finish, which I think is very satisfying on this instrument. It gives it an oldie worldy sort of look, something from perhaps the 30s. Let's listen to a little bit of finger picking on it. That was not right. A nice enough sound. It's got a nice sound. It will improve, as I think I've already said. It will improve with age. There are a number of problems with this instrument, but none of them actually are to do with the instrument itself. It's a beautifully made instrument. The problems all come because of its size, and the same would be true of any sopranino, even a handmade one. One fact then is that it does need to be tuned, I think, higher. You might even consider E-flat tuning, because otherwise the strings would be too slack. So it's not going to be your normal tuning. Some people have it tuned to the regular C tuning, but I feel that would not be right. Secondly, tuning it is more critical. And it's difficult enough with friction tuners. You do need to be very careful with your tuning, but nowadays, of course, there are electronic tuners like this one, which make it much easier. What you must remember also is that when you're pressing on the fret, not to press on too hard, otherwise it will send the note out of tune. Have a listen to this. Now I'm just changing the pressure of my finger. There's a tendency for ukulele players, particularly if they were once guitarists, to press on too hard, and that will send the note out of tune. So you do need to be careful. Only use as much pressure as you need. And on an instrument this size, that's not very much. We've mentioned that the frets are not spaced very far apart, so you've got to compensate for that. It's like playing part way up on a soprano. It's like playing round about here on a soprano. Imagine that was the nut round about there. So it isn't really a problem. Another difficulty is finding a case for it, because it's not a popular instrument this size, so cases are not easily available. I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about this instrument. It's a beautiful instrument and it's not very expensive. If you want a third or a fourth instrument, choose this one. Bye bye.